Welcome back to That Time When. Matt Miller with you in Studio 4. This is the series where we take you through the archive here at Trekzone. And today we're continuing the recap of Talkin Trek for another week. This time, Lee Sargent and I, towards the end of 2019, we dived into all of the movies. We broke them down into 3 podcasts, but this is the first part, those original movies. I'll have more details right after we listen to Lee and I chatting about the Star Trek movies. We are going to be talking movies over the next 3 episodes. And, of course, people can find you at Twitter, at Lee Sargent.
That's right.
And Lee draws stuff on Facebook as well. And I'm there on Twitter at MirrorMatt86. But today, let's talk original series movies. The first 6. We had a couple of interesting ones and a couple of doozies. What are your thoughts overall?
Yeah, like I don't actually give a lot of credit to the whole kind of the odds and evens story. That I think because the whole thing was that the odd films were the bad films and the even films were the good films, and it all kind of falls down a little bit for me because Star Trek 3 I consider to be one of the better ones, and also I like Star Trek 5 despite all of its flaws. I think that there's a lot of heart in that film. So I don't subscribe to that. But overall, I mean, this is what a wonderful period of Star Trek. We have this amazing trilogy that takes place, which, if it was happening today, it would be a lot more pronounced. But it's almost, you get to the end of Star Trek, Star Trek 4, I guess, and you go, well, oh, wow, I've just been watching a whole trilogy of a story that's played right out over 3 films. And that's all really, really cool. So yeah, and then of course Star Trek 6, I really love Star Trek 6. I'm not sure if we lump Generations in with the next batch or whether or not that's considered to be an original. But yeah, it's like overall, I mean, I don't. It's funny when people kind of talk about, oh, what's your favorite and what's your least favorite, and it's like least favorite. It's really not that bad of an award when it comes to these films.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, I think one of the biggest guest stars that they had in these original series movies, and we can sort of touch on Generations because it obviously starts in that timeline. But I was getting to, the biggest guest star has to be Ricardo Montalban's chest.
I certainly it was a sight to behold. It's it's such a but it's such an interesting thing to have. Like Ricardo Montalban was, of course, famous outside of Star Trek, Fantasy Island. He was massive for that, and it was just this kind of. He's just this force of nature on screen, and he's got this giant bare chest that these are his pecs. There's no prosthetics there or anything. This is pure Montalban, and it's very he just completely just gives everything to that role.
I wonder whether people were getting confused in the cinema. Just by the sheer size of these pecs. We shouldn't focus too much on them.
It's a question raised, that's the thing, and so they did answer it, and they confirmed that it was indeed just it's all him. There's another actor who he was in the original Tick series and also as Batman and he was also in Dark Knight. He has quite heavy lines on his eyes, and everyone always questions whether or not he's wearing eyeliner. And he's like, no, this is completely natural. This is what my eyes look like. So I imagine it was like that for Ricardo. He's like, no, this is all me. Do you want to do some push-ups? Because I'll show you.
I just think it's brilliant that the costume designer has come along, just seen who they're working with, and just gone, you know what? I ain't covering that at all.
What I think is interesting about the costume too is that it's an interesting mix mash of, it's supposed to be the remnants of Starfleet uniforms and stuff like that, and it's interesting kind of what the mix of it is. Like the medallion he wears on his chest is supposed to be the Starfleet Delta, and it is, but it's not from original Star Trek. Like they didn't have the metal badges. It's a completely kind of new made up thing, and I think there was like scraps of material and stuff which almost resemble the maroon jackets, but he obviously wouldn't have had access to them. in the day.
The question was also raised too about Chekov, who wasn't in that episode in Space Seed of the original series.
Yeah. He wasn't on screen in that episode.
Well, this is the interesting thing. Because he wasn't actually introduced in the second season as a new person on the ship, as a new officer on the ship, one could create some headcanon if you're going down that path and saying, well, he was in the lower decks and they would have passed each other.
Yeah.
Maybe he was on security.
Well, no, you could easily have him bringing dinner, someone had to show him how to use some of the devices, stuff like that. Easily could have been the ensign who was assigned to do that stuff.
Absolutely.
I don't think it's a huge, it's certainly not a deal breaker, and it's certainly not everyone loves to jump on it and go, oh, and it's but it's of all the things to explain off, it's pretty bloody easy to explain.
Exactly. Well, let's not dwell too much on the Wrath of Khan, because there are six and a half movies in this series.
And controversially, I'll say Wrath of Khan isn't necessarily my favourite.
Oh, okay.
Everyone feels like they go to Wrath of Khan as their favourite, and I'm it's such an easy one. And for a long time, Star Trek 6 was my favourite. But I think I have the confidence in my choice now to say Star Trek 3 is actually my favourite.
Okay. Well, The Search for Spock, certainly an interesting one. And
the visuals are amazing in Search for Spock.
Absolutely.
The wounded Enterprise coming back into space dock. The soundtrack in Search for Spock is just unbelievably good. The music that actually accompanies the Enterprise returning to space dock is so exceptional. And then we have this amazing scene in Star Trek 3 where the Enterprise is kind of gliding into view, and there's a bunch of officers sitting around space dock and they all stop and stare, and we get a great look of Janice Rand, who of course appeared in the original series, and we get to see, she does this amazing shake of the head. And I always, when I was a kid, I never really understood the significance of that. I always kind of saw that I didn't realize it was her first thing, because her hair is completely different, and I always saw that as someone kind of shaking their head at the recklessness of James T. Kirk, and not realizing that it was actually her heart broken over the Enterprise being damaged like that. Watching the wounded Enterprise come in and knowing that Spock had been killed and stuff like that. I think that was it's an exceptionally good scene. And then I think William Shatner gets to really shine in this entire film, directed by, of course, his good friend Leonard Nimoy. Things like, when the ensign asks whether or not, or the cadet asks whether or not there'll be a service or a celebration, a hero's welcome. Wonderful sequence. And of course, then when his son is killed by Commander Kruge, who is an amazing Klingon. Christopher Lloyd really doesn't get enough credit for really shaping Klingons in that performance, because he does an amazing job. Kirk falling down on the bridge is just exceptional. It's full of such exceptional scenes, and I think I think that's a shame that it gets lumped in with kind of this whole bullshit about. Oh, sorry, I realise that I've got to scale back with those, the swears. It falls under this ridiculousness of this kind of, it's an odd film, it's an odd numbered film, so it's not as good. And it's like, but
go for
the
it.
Sequences, if you're a Star Trek fan, if you're looking for core Star Trek stuff, Star Trek 3 delivers massively.
So we covered all of those off in 3 parts, dividing them up into the original movies, the Next Generation movies, and the next movies, or the JJ verse, if you will. You can catch that in full by clicking on the card here on the YouTube video. If you're listening to me, jump onto Trekzone.org, scroll through to the That Time When section, and click on the Talkin Trek Recap Movies link, and that'll take you through and give you a link to catch the podcasts in full. For now, though, and as always, I'm Matt Miller for Trekzone.
Keep up to date with Twitter. Catch new podcasts daily on YouTube. Plus, we're beaming to your favorite podcast app 5 days a week. Just search for Trekzone and subscribe.